I learned early on that keeping the peace meant not putting my parents in a position to choose between me and my brother. It wasn't easy, but I managed to convince myself it was for the best. I focused on being responsible, getting good grades, and helping around the house. Meanwhile, my brother got away with everything, skipping chores, coming home late, even failing classes. But my parents always had an excuse ready for him. As we grew older, the pattern continued. I put myself through college, landed a stable job, and married a wonderful man. My brother, on the other hand, bounced from job to job and made questionable life choices. Yet, whenever he needed help, my parents were there in a heartbeat, often at my expense. The real trouble started when my brother married his wife. Her family was a piece of work, entitled, snobby, and just plain mean. They insisted on hosting Thanksgiving every year, and to keep my parents happy, my husband and I always went along with it. But things took a turn for the worse when my sister-in-law's father started picking on my 5-year-old son. The first time it happened, I brushed it off as a misunderstanding, but last Thanksgiving it became unbearable. He constantly criticized my son's table manners, made fun of his interests, and even called him slow when he couldn't answer a question about some obscure historical fact. I was fuming, but I bit my tongue to avoid causing a scene. The day after Thanksgiving, I called my brother. I told him we needed to talk about what happened the day before. He acted confused, so I explained that his father-in-law's behavior towards my son was completely unacceptable. I warned him that if this continued, we wouldn't be attending any more family gatherings at their house. My brother tried to brush it off, saying his father-in-law was just joking around and that I was being too sensitive. I told him this wasn't a joke and that my child was hurt. I made it clear I wouldn't stand for it. My brother reluctantly agreed to talk to his father-in-law, but I could tell he wasn't taking it seriously. But I knew nothing would change. We saw them a few times after that at neutral locations, and while the father-in-law behaved, I could tell he was just waiting for another opportunity to lash out. This year, my husband and I decided enough was enough. We planned a trip for Thanksgiving, just our little family. It would be a chance to create some positive memories and start our own traditions. In a moment of optimism, we extended the invitation to my parents and my brother's family. When I called my parents to tell them about our plans, their response was predictable. I explained our trip plans and invited them to join us. My mom said it sounded lovely, but immediately asked about my brother's family. I told her we had invited them too, but they hadn't responded yet. My dad then said they couldn't really commit until they knew what my brother's family was doing. I sighed and told them I understood, even though it hurt. A few days later, I got a call from my brother. He told me that they weren't going on our trip and would be doing Thanksgiving at his in-laws as usual. When I said okay and thanked him for letting me know, he assumed we would still be coming to his in-laws. I had to explain that we were actually going ahead with our trip. He seemed shocked and argued that since they said no, he thought we had canceled the trip. I clarified that the invitation was open to everyone, but wasn't dependent on everyone coming. My brother warned me that our parents wouldn't like this, but I reminded him that they were adults who could make their own decisions. Sure enough, my parents called shortly after. My mom asked if we were still going on the trip, and I confirmed that we were looking forward to it. My dad protested, saying that my brother's family was having Thanksgiving at their place and they couldn't choose between their children. I explained that they weren't being forced to choose and were free to do whatever they wanted. My mom brought up tradition, saying we always spent Thanksgiving together. I told her that this year we were starting a new tradition, one that didn't involve subjecting my children to people who mistreat them. They weren't happy, but I stood my ground. We booked our trip and started making plans. I thought that was the end of it until I got a group text today about Thanksgiving plans at my brother's in-laws. I replied politely, thanking them for the invite, but reminding them that we would be out of town for Thanksgiving this year. I wished them a great time. The responses came flooding in. My brother asked what I meant about being out of town, saying he thought we had canceled the trip. My sister-in-law called us inconsiderate, claiming they had been planning this for months. My mom pleaded with me to reconsider, saying it wouldn't be the same without us. My dad accused me of tearing the family apart. I took a deep breath and typed out one last message. I apologized for how they felt, but stated that our plans hadn't changed. I reminded them that we had told them about this trip months ago and that we were going. I explained that our family needed this time together and expressed hope that they could respect our decision. Then I muted the conversation. My husband came over, saw my phone buzzing with notifications, and gave me a hug. He asked if I was okay, and I told him that I thought I was. I shared that for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing for us. My husband agreed, saying we were going to have an amazing Thanksgiving. As I looked at my children playing in the next room, I knew we had made the right choice. This Thanksgiving might be different, but it would be ours, and that was something to be truly thankful for. I met my husband when I was 28, fresh out of a long-term relationship that went nowhere. He was divorced with 2 young daughters, and I fell for him hard. We clicked instantly, bonding over our shared love of hiking and terrible dad jokes. At first, I was hesitant about dating someone with kids. I'd always wanted children of my own, but stepping into a ready-made family was daunting. However, his girls were adorable and seemed to take to me right away. We'd have movie nights, bake cookies together, and I even helped them with their homework. It felt like I was living in a modern-day Brady Bunch. Fast forward 7 years, and we're married with 2 kids of our own. Our son is 6, and our daughter is 3. Life was pretty good for a while. Sure, co-parenting with my husband's ex-wife was challenging at times, but we managed to make it work. Until we didn't. 3 years ago, something shifted. My stepdaughters, now 13 and 12, started treating me differently. It was subtle at first. Less enthusiasm when I picked them up from school, rolling their eyes when I asked about their day. Then it escalated. One day, my older stepdaughter snapped at me when I asked her to clean her room. She angrily told me I wasn't her real mom and couldn't tell her what to do. I calmly explained that while I knew I wasn't her mom, I was still an adult in the house and deserved respect. She dismissively replied that her mom said they didn't have to listen to me. That's when I realized their mother had been poisoning them against me. It broke my heart. We tried family therapy, but nothing seemed to change their attitude. The courts got involved, but that didn't help either. It's been a constant struggle ever since. Now we're dealing with this dance class drama. A few months ago, the girls came home buzzing about these new dance classes they wanted to take. They were already doing ballet, gymnastics, and a free dance class, but apparently these new ones were different. I expressed my concerns to my husband, pointing out that the classes were far away and more expensive than what we were already paying. He acknowledged my points, but said he'd discuss it with their mom since the girls really wanted to do it. A few days later, my husband told me that he and his ex had agreed to let the girls take the dance classes, splitting the cost between them. I was shocked and reminded him of our previous discussion about the classes being too far and expensive. He tried to reassure me that they'd figure out the logistics, but I was frustrated. The next time the girls were with us, they cornered me in the kitchen. They told me their mom had told them about my disapproval of the dance classes. When I tried to explain, they cut me off, saying their mom had told them it didn't matter what I thought because I wasn't their parent. I was speechless. My husband intervened, telling them not to speak to me like that, but the damage was done. Things came to a head when my husband couldn't get his parents to take the girls to their new classes. He asked me to drive them, but I had to refuse because I needed to take our son to his activity. My husband tried to persuade me, saying we needed to make it work. I stood my ground, reminding him that I'd been clear from the beginning about not being able to help with this. We argued back and forth, with him insisting he had to work and me refusing to rearrange our lives for a decision I hadn't been part of. The next thing I know, I'm getting nasty texts from his ex-wife. She accused me of refusing to drive her children to dance class and called me names. I defended myself, explaining that I had prior commitments to my own children. She accused me of being jealous and told me to do what was best for the girls. I tried to explain that what was best for them was having parents who communicated and made decisions together. She dismissed me, saying I didn't get to have an opinion because I was nothing to them. I showed the texts to my husband, expecting him to defend me. Instead, he just sighed and said he'd figure something out. That was the last straw for me. I decided it was time to set some firm boundaries. I told my husband I'd had enough of being treated like a doormat. I explained that from now on, I wouldn't be involving myself in decisions regarding his ex or the girls' activities. I made it clear that if he agreed to something, he needed to figure out how to make it work without relying on me. He protested, saying we were a family and should support each other. I agreed, but pointed out that the support needed to go both ways. I told him he couldn't expect me to rearrange my life every time he and his ex made a decision without considering how it affected everyone else. When he asked what he was supposed to do about the dance classes, I told him that was for him and his ex to figure out since they'd made the decision together. From that day on, I stuck to my guns. When the girls were with us, I treated them with kindness, but didn't go out of my way to accommodate their every whim. I focused on my own kids and let my husband deal with the fallout from his decisions. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of tense moments. The ex-wife continued to badmouth me to anyone who would listen, but I refused to engage. My stepdaughters remained cold, but I no longer let it bother me as much. As for the dance classes, they lasted all of 3 months before the girls got bored and wanted to quit. My husband and his ex had to eat the cost of the expensive lessons and the non-refundable costumes. It's not the family dynamic I imagined when I first fell in love with my husband, but it's the reality I'm living in. I may not be the favorite stepmom, but I've learned to prioritize my own well-being and that of my children. And you know what? That's okay. I've always known I wasn't exactly wanted. My parents had me when they were just kids themselves. Mom was 18 and Dad was 19. From the start, it was clear they resented having to grow up so fast. They never really tried to be good parents, always acting like I was this huge burden they were stuck with. Most of my time was spent at friends' houses. It was the only place I felt comfortable, you know? My extended family had disowned my parents for having me so young, so I didn't have any grandparents or aunts or uncles to turn to. My friends' homes became my safe havens. My parents never did normal parent stuff. Homework help? Nope. Showing up to school events? Never. Parent-teacher conferences? I don't think they even knew those existed. Getting them to sign stuff for school was like pulling teeth. I'd have to practically shove the papers in their faces on the last possible day just to get a signature. Birthdays and Christmas? Barely acknowledged. But their wedding anniversary? Oh, that was a big deal. All about them, of course. 2 years ago, when I was 13, they dropped a bombshell on me. Mom was pregnant again. At first, I was surprised, maybe even a little hopeful. But then came the comments that made it clear where I stood. My parents expressed their excitement about having a baby and becoming parents as if I didn't even exist. One of Mom's friends actually reminded her about me, but their response just twisted the knife deeper. They referred to me as their too early practice run and claimed this new baby was the real deal. They said they were now ready to be real parents. When my sister was born, it was like I vanished completely. One day at school, I got pretty sick. The school tried calling someone to pick me up, but my parents just ignored the calls. When I finally dragged myself home, the house was empty. They'd taken the baby out for a family day. When they finally got back, they acted like nothing was wrong. I asked if they had gotten the calls from school, explaining that I had been sick all day. They casually mentioned that they had turned their phones off to enjoy family time and didn't want any interruptions during their special day with the baby. After my sister was born, everything changed even more. Mom quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom. Dad started leaving work early on Fridays for family time, which never included me, of course. They were always talking about having another kid, like my sister wasn't enough. Last week, they sat me down for a family meeting. Turns out, They've been trying for another baby for over a year with no luck, so now they're jumping into fertility treatments. They told me they needed me to watch my sister for a few hours each week while they went to their appointments. They even gave me a detailed list of everything she needed and what I'd be doing with her. After years of neglect, they suddenly expected me to be their free babysitter? I refused, telling them that she was their kid, not mine, and that they needed to take care of her since they decided to have her. My mom tried to downplay it, saying it was just a few hours a week and not a big deal. My dad suggested I think of it as paying them back for everything they've done for me. That was the last straw. I confronted them about never caring about me and questioned why I should help them now. They dismissed my feelings, saying I was being dramatic and that they had always provided for me. My dad pointed out that I had a roof over my head and food on the table, asking what more I wanted. I told them I wanted actual parenting, love, and support. They looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. I told them I was done, that I wouldn't watch their precious baby or help them make another one, and that I was leaving. I stormed out of the house, ignoring their shouts behind me. I went straight to my best friend's place, the one who'd been more of a family to me than my own parents ever were. My friend's mom took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. I spilled everything, all the years of neglect and hurt, and their latest demand. She comforted me, assuring me that I didn't owe my parents anything, and reminding me that I was always welcome at their home. I nodded. For the first time, I realized I had options. I didn't have to stay in that house constantly reminded of how unwanted I was. The next day, I went back home to grab some of my stuff. My parents were there looking annoyed. My mom demanded to know where I had been, saying they needed me to watch my sister that afternoon. I stood my ground, telling them I wouldn't do it and that I was moving out. My dad scoffed, asking where I would even go. I told them about my friend's family offering to let me stay with them. My mom tried to protest, saying I couldn't just leave because they were my parents. I challenged her claim, pointing out how they had made it clear that I was just an inconvenience to them. I told them I was solving that problem for them. I packed up my things, ignoring their protests and weak attempts to stop me. As I walked out the door, I turned back one last time, wishing them luck with their real family and hoping it was everything they had always wanted. I walked away, leaving them standing there with their mouths hanging open. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I was done being the unwanted child, the practice run. It was time for me to find people who actually cared about me, to create my own family, one built on love and support, not obligation and resentment. My parents wanted to play happy family without me? Fine. They could have their perfect little world. Me? I was off to start a new chapter, one where I actually mattered. My dad was a butcher, so we always had the best cuts at home. He taught me everything about selecting, preparing, and cooking different types of meat. It wasn't just food for us, it was a passion, a craft. When I started lifting weights in college, I realized how crucial protein was for my gains. Steak became not just a delicious meal, but an essential part of my fitness routine. I'd hit the gym every day, pushing my limits, and then come home to a juicy, perfectly cooked steak. It was my reward, my fuel, my way of life. I met my girlfriend during my senior year of college. We clicked instantly over our shared love for cooking, although our tastes were quite different. She was more into experimenting with various cuisines, while I stuck to my tried-and-true meat and potatoes combo. Still, we made it work. We'd cook together, trying out new recipes, and I'd always make sure to have some meat on the side for myself. Things were going great until about 6 months ago when she suddenly decided to go vegetarian. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was just another one of her food experiments. She'd done juice cleanses and gone gluten-free before, so I assumed this was just another phase. I supported her decision, even though I knew I'd never give up my beloved steaks. We fell into a routine where I'd cook my usual meals, steak, chicken, or lamb with some sides, and she'd either make her own vegetarian dishes or just eat the sides I prepared. It worked well enough, or so I thought. About a month ago, things started to change. She began watching all these documentaries and YouTube videos about the dangers of red meat. At first, it was just casual comments here and there. My girlfriend asked me if I had ever thought about how much red meat I ate. She mentioned she'd been reading about health risks. I told her I hadn't really considered it because I felt great, and it had always worked for me. I didn't think much of it, but the comments kept coming. Every time I'd sit down with my steak, she'd have something to say. She started telling me about how the meat industry was bad for the environment, mentioning something about cows producing methane. I just asked her to pass the salt, trying to avoid the conversation. I tried to brush it off, hoping she'd get the hint that I wasn't interested in discussing it. But she didn't stop. It got to the point where I couldn't enjoy a single meal without her bringing up some new fact or statistic. Then came the animal cruelty talks. She'd try to show me videos of slaughterhouses or factory farms while I was eating. I asked her not to do this while I was trying to eat. She questioned if I cared about what I was putting in my body and the suffering of animals. I told her I understood she was passionate about it, but I really didn't want to watch those videos. It all came to a head today. I came home from the gym, starving and ready for my usual post-workout steak. As I was seasoning the meat, she walked into the kitchen with a determined look on her face. She told me we needed to talk about my eating habits and suggested I should cut out red meat completely. I responded that there was no way I would do that, reminding her how important it was for my diet and workout routine. She then brought up the animals and tried to make me watch a video on her phone. I pushed it away, probably a bit more forcefully than I intended. I told her I didn't want to see that stuff and asked why she couldn't respect my choices. She accused me of being selfish, saying my choices were killing innocent animals and destroying the planet. That's when I lost it. All the frustration from the past month came pouring out. I pointed out that I had never commented on her eating habits and had respected her choice when she went vegetarian. I asked why she couldn't do the same for me. She argued that it wasn't the same thing because she was trying to save animals and the environment. I explained that I was trying to maintain my health and pursue my fitness goals. I told her she didn't get to decide what was right for me and that watching documentaries didn't mean she knew everything. When she tried to bring up facts, I questioned the validity of her sources, suggesting they were cherry-picked data from biased sources. I told her that her reality had been warped by these videos and that she needed to realize not everyone had to live according to her newfound beliefs. She stood there, mouth agape, clearly not expecting me to push back so hard. After a moment of tense silence, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I finished cooking my steak and ate it in peace for the first time in weeks. As I cleaned up the kitchen, I heard her shuffling around in the bedroom, probably packing a bag. Sure enough, a few minutes later, she emerged with an overnight bag. She announced she was going to stay at her sister's for a few days, saying she couldn't be around someone who didn't care about animals or the planet. I told her that was fine by me and suggested that maybe some time apart would help her realize how ridiculous she was being. She left without another word. I knew this wasn't the end of it, but at least I'd have a few days to enjoy my meals without a lecture. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and settled on the couch, finally able to relax. When I scrolled through my phone, I saw a notification from a local butcher shop advertising a sale on premium cuts. I smiled to myself, already planning my menu for the next few days. Maybe it was petty, but I decided to document every delicious meaty meal on social media. I knew she'd see it, and part of me hoped it would drive home the point that I wasn't going to change my lifestyle for anyone. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized that this might be the beginning of the end for our relationship. But if she couldn't respect my choices, maybe it was for the best. After all, life's too short to let someone else dictate what goes on your plate. When my older sister asked me to be her man of honor at her wedding, I was thrilled, of course. We've always been close, especially after our mom passed away when I was just a kid. Let me give you some background. I'm 17 and my sister is 22. Our mom died when I was 8, and about a year later, our dad remarried. His new wife already had 2 kids, and they went on to have 3 more together. So yeah, it's a big blended family situation. My sister and I, we've always had a special bond. She was like a second mom to me after we lost ours. She'd help me with homework, make me snacks, and was always there when I needed someone to talk to. Our step-siblings and half-siblings are okay, I guess, but we never really clicked with them the same way. So when my sister told me she wanted me as her man of honor, I was over the moon. But then all hell broke loose. My dad found out and he wasn't happy. He cornered my sister one day, and I overheard their conversation. My dad told my sister she couldn't just ask me to be in the wedding party without including the other kids, saying it wasn't fair. My sister argued back, saying it was her wedding and she could choose whoever she wanted for her wedding party. Dad insisted that the others were family too, and accused her of prioritizing me over siblings who were younger or not biologically related. My sister defended her choice, saying she wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but that we were close, and that was all there was to it. Dad then threatened that if she didn't include all the kids, none of them would attend, and he'd make sure I didn't go either. My sister was shocked, asking if he was really threatening to keep me from her wedding when I was nearly an adult. Dad pulled the "I'm his father" card, saying he decided what was best for the family. In response, my sister said she'd just moved the wedding date so I'd be 18, and Dad couldn't stop me. My sister was willing to postpone her entire wedding just so I could be part of it. It made me feel special, but also guilty that I was causing so much trouble. True to her word, my sister pushed the wedding back a year. My dad and stepmom were furious when they found out. They called me into the living room for a family meeting. My stepmom started by asking if I realized what I was doing, accusing me of tearing the family apart. I defended myself, saying I wasn't doing anything and it was my sister's choice. Dad jumped in, saying I was going along with it and hurting my other siblings' feelings, making them feel rejected. I tried to downplay it, saying it was just a wedding party and we didn't mean to hurt anyone. My stepmom argued it was more than that, accusing my sister of making me choose between her and the rest of the family. I insisted I wasn't choosing anyone over anyone else, just feeling honored that my sister asked me. Dad brought up my 5 other siblings, saying I shouldn't risk my relationship with all of them for one. I said I wasn't risking anything, that I loved all my siblings, but my sister and I had a special bond. They kept arguing with me, trying to make me feel guilty. But I stood my ground. I told them I was going to be my sister's man of honor no matter what they said. For a couple of months, things were tense but quiet. Then, one night, they ambushed me again. Dad told me to sit down, saying we needed to talk. When I asked what it was about now, my stepmom said my siblings had noticed what was going on and were hurt, asking if I felt bad about that. I said I was sorry they were hurt, but insisted I wasn't doing anything wrong. Dad accused me of being selfish, warning that I'd regret burning these bridges in 10 or 20 years. I maintained that I wasn't burning any bridges, just standing by my sister. Then Dad crossed a line, saying my mother would be disgusted with both of us for not making room for our growing family after she died. That last comment hit me hard. How dare he use my mom against me like that? I was furious. I lashed out, telling Dad not to dare speak for Mom. I said she'd be proud of us for sticking together and accused him of trying to control everything and make us feel bad for being close. I stormed out of the room after that. The next day I called my sister and told her everything. My sister apologized for what I was dealing with and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, just angry, and explained how they were trying to guilt-trip me into backing out. She encouraged me not to let them get to me, insisting we weren't doing anything wrong. I agreed, expressing how I couldn't wait to be 18 and out of there. My sister told me to hang in there, saying it would be worth it when we were celebrating at the wedding without them there to ruin it. She was right. The months ticked by, and finally, my 18th birthday arrived. I moved out that same day, crashing on my sister's couch until I could find a place of my own. The wedding day came, and it was perfect. I stood proudly next to my sister as her man of honor. Our dad, stepmom, and other siblings weren't there, but honestly, we didn't miss them. The ceremony was beautiful, and during the reception, my sister pulled me aside. My sister thanked me for standing by her through all of this, saying it meant more than I knew. I assured her it was no problem, that she was my sister and I'd always have her back. Family isn't just about blood or who lives under the same roof. It's about the bonds you choose to nurture and protect. And no amount of guilt-tripping or manipulation could ever break the bond I have with my sister. My older cousin and I were close, bonding over our shared love of vibrant colors and bold fashion choices. When she got engaged, I was thrilled to be asked to be a bridesmaid. Little did I know, this would put me right in the middle of another family drama. It all started when my cousin sent us the bridesmaid dresses in our group chat. The moment I saw it, I fell in love. It was an orange satin dress with a pink floral pattern, exactly the kind of eye-catching piece my cousin would choose. I could already picture us all lined up on the beach, the bright dresses popping against the blue ocean backdrop. Everyone in the chat seemed to love it too. Messages of excitement and heart emojis flooded the screen. My cousin was over the moon, and I was happy for her. That is, until my younger sister called me. When I answered the phone, my sister immediately launched into a tirade about the dress. She called it a monstrosity and asked if I had seen it. I told her I thought it was pretty, but she couldn't believe I liked it. She declared it hideous and said she couldn't wear it. I sighed, knowing this conversation wasn't going to be easy. I tried to convince her that it wasn't that bad and fit the tropical theme perfectly. She argued that it was tacky and impractical, complaining about wearing satin on a beach. I pointed out it was just for one day, but she refused to budge. My sister then demanded that I help her talk to our cousin about changing the dress. I told her I didn't think that was a good idea, explaining that it was our cousin's wedding and her choice. She countered with an argument about bodily autonomy, insisting she shouldn't have to wear something she hated. I tried to explain that being a bridesmaid sometimes means wearing a dress you wouldn't pick yourself, but she wouldn't listen. She claimed this situation was different because the dress was not just unflattering, but downright ugly. She even suggested we ask the other bridesmaids, thinking they must hate it too. I warned her not to do that, reminding her we barely knew the other bridesmaids and it would just cause drama. When she realized I wasn't going to help her, she asked me directly. I told her no and that she needed to suck it up and wear the dress. My sister hung up on me. Over the next few weeks, she kept pestering me about the dress. She sent me countless texts with alternatives she'd found online, insisting they'd look better. I ignored most of them, hoping she'd eventually give up. But my sister was nothing if not persistent. One day, about a month before the wedding, my phone rang. It was my cousin, and she sounded upset. My cousin asked if I had a minute to talk. I assured her I did and asked what was wrong. She then told me that my sister had called her, saying she couldn't wear the bridesmaid dress. I should have known my sister wouldn't let it go. I apologized and asked what exactly my sister had said. My cousin explained that my sister had called the dress ugly and tacky, saying she'd be embarrassed to be seen in it. She even suggested that the other bridesmaids felt the same way, but were too scared to say anything. I quickly assured my cousin that wasn't true, reminding her that everyone had loved the dress in the group chat. She acknowledged this, but admitted she was now second-guessing everything. She asked if I thought she should change the dress. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to stand my ground. I told her absolutely not, reminding her it was her wedding and she chose that dress for a reason. I reassured her it was beautiful and perfect for her theme. My cousin worried that my sister might be right and everyone might hate the dress. I assured her they didn't, and even if they did, it didn't matter because it was her day, not theirs. She agreed, but couldn't believe my sister's behavior. I apologized again for my sister's actions and asked what she wanted to do. She admitted she didn't know, saying she couldn't have a bridesmaid who hated everything about her wedding. I told her I understood and would support whatever she decided. After we hung up, I was fuming. I immediately called my sister. I demanded to know what she was thinking, calling our cousin like that. She defended herself, saying she didn't want to look like a clown at the wedding. I reminded her it wasn't about her and asked if she realized how upset our cousin was now. My sister seemed pleased by this, hoping it would lead to a change in dress choice. I accused her of being incredibly selfish, reminding her it was our cousin's special day, not hers. My sister stubbornly declared that if the dress wasn't changed, she wouldn't be a bridesmaid. I told her that was her choice and hung up, still angry, but relieved that it was over. The next day, I got a text from my cousin. She told me that she had made a decision to keep the dresses but asked my sister to step down as a bridesmaid. She hoped I would understand. I replied that I completely understood, and, while sorry it had come to this, I thought it was the right choice. My cousin thanked me for my support, saying it meant a lot to her. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything my cousin had dreamed of. The bridesmaids, myself included, looked stunning in our bright orange and pink dresses. When we posed for photos on the beach, I caught sight of my sister sitting in the audience, wearing a plain navy dress that blended into the background. For once, she didn't look happy to be the center of attention. I was overjoyed for the newlyweds, proud of myself for standing by my cousin's choices, but also a little sad about the rift this had caused with my sister. Still, as I looked down at my vibrant dress, catching the last rays of the setting sun, I knew I had made the right decision. Sometimes, being a good friend and family member means putting someone else's happiness before your own preferences, and in this case, it had resulted in a truly unforgettable celebration of love. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, drop them in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next video.